welcome to our year review of 2020 Vodcast, which is also episode 41. Now, last year's year review Vodcast, I don't know if you remember this, Sid, but we entitled it 2019, A Strange Year. Little did we know. So, Sid, how would you sum up 2020?
Well, Raf, last week we got a certain amount of feedback for the vodcast for some language that was used by a certain editor with regard to our Prime Minister, our esteemed Prime Minister. So I think that, on a family vodcast, all I can say is, what do you think?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. Well done. Okay. So, did you have a favourite moment from 2020? Because let's start with the positives after that outburst. Let's start with the positives.
Yeah, obviously, well, I want to say up front that I've been, frequently accused of being biased towards, a certain team in orange in the Super League and in the Rachel Flint Trophy. And actually, there's no evidence whatsoever that I've been biased at all. I've been completely neutral, at all times, and I'm absolutely not a fan of any one team over another.
That's a really nice shirt you've got there,
Isn't it?
Sid.
Yeah. That being said, I really enjoyed the Rachel Flint Trophy, and I obviously loved the final at Edgbaston. It was fantastic, and I felt really privileged to be there and to be able to watch that in person. And I also really enjoyed personally the Vipers win at the Oval, which was a match that it looked like they maybe weren't going to win against the Stars, and they pulled it out of the bag, and that was just such a great moment to watch as, go on, let's admit it, a bit of a fan. So that was my moment of the year. What about you, Raf?
Well, I think it's probably predictable what I'm going to say. One of us had to say it, and it was that final at the MCG back in March, just before the world went crazy. And I think that for me, it was that moment right at the start, just when they were doing the anthem. And everyone was crowded in to the ground, and it wasn't 100% full, but it was nearly. And I was just looking round before a ball had been bowled, and I just got quite emotional, because I suppose it's kind of the historian in me. Just when you see a moment like that that's so significant for women's cricket, I kind of think back to all of the stuff that went before, and all of the difficult moments, and all of the fighting for recognition, and fighting to get to play at the best grounds, and having to spend months on end fundraising because nobody would pay you to play, and all of those things, and all of those, as I say, kind of those battles that women fought so hard to achieve, and then it culminates in a moment like that at the MCG, and it just feels really, it's one of those kind of spine-tingling moments, and you get shivers and you go, this is amazing, and people are going to be writing about this and talking about this for years to come, and we're actually here in person to see it. It was amazing. So I think that was mine, really. Did you have a worse moment of the year, Sid? Because we can't be relentlessly positive all the time, unfortunately.
Well, I'm not sure you'd describe it as a worse moment, Raf, but there was some very depressing moments. In particular, when Claire Connor did a press conference at the sort of the height of the first wave, really, and we were in lockdown in this country, and things were looking pretty bad and pessimistic. And Claire Connor came on the wireless and was like, we may not even get any women's cricket at all this summer, and that was a quite depressing moment. And obviously, the good news is that it wasn't quite that bad in the end, but I remember feeling pretty low at that point. What about you, Raf?
Yeah, well, for me, again, it was, that was pretty bad. I remember that Claire Connor press conference, and just, yeah. But for me, I think it was that moment at the SCG, the semi-finals of the World T20, and obviously it rained. it rained and it rained. England's semi-final was a washout. They didn't get to play India, and that meant that they were automatically out of the tournament, and that was really a difficult moment for England and really disappointing generally. But that wasn't the worst moment of the day for me. I think the worst moment was the fact that the clouds suddenly miraculously seemed to clear for a very, very short window, and Australia did get to play their semi-final. And actually they kept playing even when it started raining, because they had to get this match in somehow. And
yeah, the moment for me was actually just before the players were due to come on to play Australia's semi-final, and it started tipping down again, and the groundsman started pulling the sheets on to cover up the pitch again, and people from Cricket Australia rushed over and physically stopped them from doing so. And that kind of summed up what was really going on there, that it didn't feel like it was, it felt like officialdom wasn't completely disinterested in the result there. That they really knew what they wanted to get out of it. And
yeah, I still maintain that if it had been any other country playing that semi-final, it wouldn't have gone ahead because the weather was too bad and the condition of the pitch was too bad. But that's ultimately what happened, and it was funny that for the whole day you had the Australian media saying this is a travesty and why on earth don't we have reserve days for semi-finals, and then suddenly Australia played their semi-final and all of that talk just disappeared. So yeah, it was kind of really a difficult day for a lot of reasons. So yeah, there was some difficult moments this year. And obviously it's been a year that has been, since March, very much shaped by COVID. How far do you think that COVID has kind of shaped the summer in the end? Because we talked about that Claire Connor press conference where she said we might not see any women's cricket at all in the summer of 2020, but we did see some in the end, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, and we had a fantastic time, and I think that the RHF Trophy was a really important step forwards. I think that it really showed that the regional system can work. And I was a little bit sceptical, partly through personal disappointment at having lost county cricket, because I've been a fan of county cricket for a long time, and I really felt that I was losing something. But what the RHF showed was that regional cricket can be a massive gain, and I think that the ECB would be mad to throw that stuff away. And particularly, again, I've harped on about this before, but the name of the competition, just keep the name, guys. Try and keep the format as close as possible because this is working. The public know about this now. So that was great, and obviously England got to play some matches in the end in September. I do think that actually the record books will show that this summer wasn't that bad because England played 5 matches, and we had a regional tournament. They're both going to show up in the record books, but actually that kind of doesn't quite do justice to the fact the impact that COVID had in knocking out all the key months of our summer, and the fact that those matches were all played in September. And we're actually quite lucky with the weather. I mean, it was blooming cold at points, but largely the rain stayed away in September. But we lost a huge chunk of the summer, and I think that the overall impact is not going to be felt until next year. I think it'll be next year when the accounts come in, and and when the fact that we'd lost 3 months of this summer and we've lost a lot of the key interest, and I think that there'll be a little bit of a slump there that's still to come. But we'll still try and go positively into next year, I think, and try and take what we can from it.
Okay. And if COVID hadn't happened, then I suppose we'd be doing a very different Vodcast now, because we do always do our annual year-end review, and I suppose
the Christmas tree makes its annual appearance.
And I suppose we'd, instead of reflecting on what was a very one-sided series against West Indies, we'd be reflecting on the series that England was supposed to play, one of which was obviously against India, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, India were due to come over here, and I think that after India's relative success in they got trounced in the final, but they had a good World 2020, and I think that could have been an interesting series, couldn't it, Raf?
Yeah, it certainly would have been a lot more competitive than the one that we did see. I still think that probably we'd be reflecting on an England series victory, both in the one day and the T20 format, although obviously that's mere speculation on my part. but it certainly would have been in terms of kind of an actual spectacle for people viewing and for having that match on the BBC might have provided a bit of kind of more solid interest there, or something a bit better to watch maybe. And I think as well, obviously our vodcast is quite Anglo-centric most of the time, but if we're thinking about things from an Indian perspective, what an absolutely disappointing second half of the year it's been after that high of reaching the World Cup final, and all of the interest and excitement that generated in India. And now the Indian women's team haven't played for months, and it's not clear when they're going to play again. And yes, the BCCI of this week been paying lip service to the possibility of, we're going to organise tours for our team, and we're going to rearrange our tour of England for the summer of 2021. Well, I don't know when they think that those matches are going to be played, because the ECB have already set up their series against South Africa and New Zealand. So it's all very well for the BCCI to kind of say, oh yeah, we're doing this, that and the other, but until they've got some actual tour dates that they can wave in front of me and say, this is what we're doing and this is when we're doing it, then that's not very useful, I'm afraid.
Yeah, and they say that there's going to be matches against Sri Lanka, but you wonder if they've actually spoken to the Sri Lankan board about that, because it feels like they probably haven't spoken to the ECB about the plans for next summer. So
yeah, exactly. The other thing, of course, that we'd be reflecting on is we'd be a couple of months away only from what was going to be the 50 over World Cup in New Zealand in February 2021, and we'd be talking about whether England could retain their 50 over title. We'd also, I suppose, be reflecting on who won the World Cup qualifier that was meant to happen in the middle of this year. Didn't happen, and obviously that World Cup has been delayed to 2022. I suppose it's kind of interesting to think about whether we might end up with a different winner of that tournament based on the COVID disruption. What do you think about that, Syd?
No. I think Australia were overwhelming favourites for that World Cup, and the COVID situation has actually made it more so. That they've had a slice of good fortune in that the key disruption of COVID was in their off season. So they didn't lose quite as much seasonal cricket as we did. They haven't had the impact that's had on India. They have played some internationals. They've got the WBBL played. And I think that Australia go into that World Cup even more certain favourites than they would have done. And honestly, I can't see anybody but Australia winning that. It will be a massive shock if anybody else is able to overturn Australia in that tournament.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I suppose in 50 over cricket they're even more dominant than 20 over cricket generally, because a longer format is more predictable.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll have to wait and see. We'll have to wait quite a long time to see in the end. Although we think that we've got the Tri-Series coming up a little bit sooner than that.
I can't believe it's not the World Cup.
So, do you think that there have been any other positives that have come out of the year, which obviously has been subject to a lot of COVID disruption, but has anything happened that might not have happened otherwise, maybe? Oh,
well, it has, hasn't it, Raf? I mean, we've been back in lockdown, as international viewers may be aware from that. We've been essentially back in lockdown since around October. And, we're now in hyper severe lockdown again, but it's given Raf the chance to write half of another book. Tell the viewers about your half another book. And hopefully they'll be able to buy a whole book at some point.
Yeah, I need to finish writing it, but hopefully coming in 2021 is my popular history of women's cricket.
It's going to be popular, so you don't want to write an unpopular book. Nobody wants an unpopular book, Raf.
Popular as opposed to academic.
Oh.
Thanks, Syd. The Women in Whites, and it's going to be published by Fairfield Books, who are a very well respected and well established publisher of cricket books. So I'm really excited about that, and that's been great to get my teeth stuck into a new project, I suppose. And I was kind of more thinking about starting the Vodcast though, because I think that's been something that's come out of the very first lockdown. I remember that I said to you, we're going to be stuck at home for goodness knows how long. We certainly didn't think it was going to be as long as it was, or that we'd still be effectively...
Boris assured us it would all be over within 12 weeks.
Exactly, and certainly everything will be back to normal by Christmas. But here we are. So we've been doing the Vodcast now, and this is the 41st episode. So it's been the long haul, and I think that's been quite fun for us, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's given us something to pass the time, and hopefully something for you guys to pass the time as well on a Sunday lunchtime.
And the other thing, of course, was that we got to run the Cricketish Cup. Remember that? Back in the days of the first lockdown, we finally put your programming talents to some use after all these years.
Finally a use for me.
And you wrote the code, and we played some virtual matches with our little yogurt pot cup, which I'm still immensely proud of, I have to say. And so that was quite fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I think it was really important to try and give some sort of just extra publicity to women's cricket during that lockdown period, and just to try and keep things bubbling a little bit. And that's why we did it. And thanks to everyone that kind of took part in the right spirit, and all the players that retweeted things and enjoyed it. So that was fun.
Yeah, I think that's that kind of speaks to what we've tried to do, even in the difficult points of this year, is to actually keep banging the drum for women's cricket. That's what we've tried to do, and hopefully we've had some success. Having said that, we do appreciate that for many of you watching, it has been a really difficult year, and we hope that to some extent watching the vodcast and engaging with us on Twitter has maybe brought you some joy at difficult moments in the year. Hopefully 2021 will be a better year for all of us, and we will look forward to catching up with some of you, hopefully in person in the next year. And thank you for being our cricket friend, and thank you for watching our vodcast. And I always used to end the vodcasts in the same way, and I think it's probably right to do that now. Stay safe and well wherever you are.